Hey guys, what's up? So today I'm going to do video game prototyping on my PC. So I was just doing some prototyping with myself, so I thought that why not do it live, right? So I've started a podcast on the side. If you guys don't mind, I'm listening to this while prototyping, so maybe it works. So this is just like a small a test project for the game. It's a mobile game. I'm creating a racing game. So this virtual joystick is not working, and I'm literally not a coder. So I'll have to like go on the web, search about it, get inside I'm using ChatGPT for coding. So yeah, that's happening. Let's see how it goes. So I guess only my this screen is working, right? Okay, I guess my sound is good. Why is everything desaturated on the screen? No worries. Let's go to web and check virtual joystick for mobile game Unity. Wait a second. Okay. पैकेज मैनेजर में क्या करना था? इनपुट सिस्टम है, फिर क्या इनपुट मैनेजर, प्लेयर, वेक्टर 2. Something's in my eye. So recently I was using rain axe on my basin and some of it poured into my hands. So right now my skin is shedding. Look at this. If you guys can see. Okay, this joystick is not working. Let's see. I've created the input actions. Okay, not car movement button type value axis joystick. Okay, I'm not able to click anything. What the hell? What's happening? Back, joystick up. So what did this guy do? Let me see.
Here, we need to add a player input component. Then select the player. Then select or vector view. Control type to any value.
Okay, value vector 2.
Or use vector view. Then select the binding and open space. Open gamepad and select left stick.
Okay.
Now when we are done, it's important to save.
Open this gamepad, left stick. Okay, save.
If we need
Player input on the main character.
then drag in the edge.
Okay.
That we made. Now let's create the UI for the joystick. We need one
UI. Camera is this.
a little bit. If you want to have a joystick in the bottom left corner, then we need to check.
Okay. Let's see. I'll add an image. Put it at the bottom. Right here. Near the end. And a little bit like
Anchor preset and fill a point to the bottom left corner. Hold Shift and Alt and then let's add the on-screen stick component.
okay. On screen. Sorry.
For the control pad, choose the same pad as we did in our that is the last thing. Let's test this. You can see that
Hmm. Was it that easy? I was struggling last night because of this. Oh man. This got so much cooler. Movement range 100. Maybe 200. Yeah. Let me connect my phone with the PC. Mm, just like that. So I'm using this Unity remote application to stream that Android app into my phone while developing. Let's see how it goes. Okay, my eyes irritating so much right now. I need to go and wash my eye first. And it works. It works. It looks so good. Shit, man. Shit, man. Built-in game. Build a game. Yeah. Thanks, bro. I think we should not create everything from the scratch. I was like yesterday creating scripts from AI, like ChatGPT and stuff. Man, this looks so much cool. So this is my mini map. So I'll put this on into the screen later, but right now this is so much better than before. Okay, maybe I might become pro at this also. Okay, I am good at this. Yeah, sure. So, sorry guys, I'll take a time out. My eyes irritating right now. I'll go and wash it. we're back with the games. इसको पॉज करते हैं. Let's begin. I think मेरे को थोड़ा सा वो करना पड़ेगा. अपना माइक का आवाज बहुत ज़्यादा आ रहा है. I guess इतना ठीक है. अरे यार ये मेरे पीसी का सी टाइप पोर्ट थोड़ा सा वीक है. क्या यार. ओके तो हम कहाँ थे. We were
can't really see. Okay, there's an advantage in legibility over handwriting.
building something, right?
But for a period of about 40
अच्छा
or
अभी
50
जस्ट मैंने
years,
जॉयस्टिक बिल्ड करी.
people would write a note. This is how it worked in business. I'm not making this up, okay? In the 70s in Ogilvy, there was a
Unity.
typing pool, which
Okay,
was
nice.
a lot of people who you
This
would
works.
hand them a handwritten note, and they'd type it up so that you could then send it on to your client. And then typically there was always a mistake,
Okay,
so you then had
this
to send
works.
it back and have it typed. There were no word
Let's
processors
go
then,
to
so the whole thing had
Illustrator
to
and
start all
create
over
a
again from
UI
scratch.
element.
And the
this,
question
because
you've
the
got to ask
square
there is,
does not
was
look
that
that much good.
simply because you weren't a serious business unless you sent typewritten communication?
Signaling.
In other words, if you're, you couldn't, as a solicitor's firm or as a, Unilever or whatever, you couldn't send handwritten notes because it simply looked unprofessional, so everything had to be
Okay.
typed. Now, there may have been
I'm
something
just
to do with
checking
carbon
something.
paper and copying, which had some particular role, which made typing desirable. But it's an interesting question because there's not
Create new
no
template.
one could really consider that typing added to productivity. Quite the opposite. It meant that every communication producing anything was painful. The only benefit it may have had is it kept the volume of communication low.
Because it's so effortful.
Well, because it was so effortful. Whereas email, the cost of actually sending an email to 100 people is far too low.
Yes.
Because then the burden of both filtering and prioritizing falls on the recipient, not on the sender.
Yeah.
It's a terror. I mean, it does amuse me this, which is
The
there's this
possible
hostility to
issues and
flexible
fixes.
working,
Move action,
which is
read
partly
value.
driven by the suspicion that people might be enjoying it. Now, okay. So it's not really to do with productivity, but there are people. I mean, someone in my company I won't name was driven practically insane by the fact that the Netflix CEO revealed that there was a spike in Netflix viewing between 12 and 1 in many countries. Lunchtime. Now, first of all, it's lunchtime. Okay, it's accepted that people have a break. If they want to chill out by having a sandwich in front of Netflix rather than wandering around to Pret, it doesn't bother me personally. But also, I would argue that a lot of people would be much more productive in work if they started work early, took a 3-hour break in the middle of the day, and then worked later. Now, commuting makes that impossible to do, but I would argue that your energy levels would be much better managed if you did take a break in the middle of the day, with the additional bonus that you'd actually get a bit of sunlight and a bit of
You can
exposure.
maybe pick the kids up at the end of that.
If you're a Scandi, okay, in the winter, you go to work in the dark,
Let's
you come
get
home in
a
the dark.
ellipse.
So effectively, your exposure to natural
Create
light
a
is
sprite.
Saturday and Sunday for 3 or 4 hours. So that doesn't bother me. The fact that people are actually choosing. If you look at writers, the people who are professional writers,
I'll make it
journalists,
gray
novelists, they're very
and no
different, by the way, but all of them have sort of conditions under which they can and can't write. And they vary. Some people demand complete silence. Some people go to a cafe because they want some background noise.
I'm also
What these people
creating
clearly
a
know
new
is
layer
that
with the stroke.
they can optimize their productivity by controlling the conditions in which they write.
Using it
And it strikes me
to
as pretty plausible that's
construct a
true for
3D
other
type
forms
of
of
joystick
knowledge
image.
work, where some people can't work if there's any background
Just like
noise or
this.
chatter. Other people can't work in complete silence
Also
because it
use
spooks them out. I've
another
known
image
writers who, if there's someone
with a little
operating an electric
bright
drill
color,
7
which
houses
will
down,
create
they're
a 3D
incapable of
effect,
producing anything.
like
There
a
are other
joystick.
people who are
Yeah, something like
spectacularly
that.
disciplined. Now, it does strike me that
I'll
you
export
will
it.
make people more productive if you allow them some degree of autonomy
Game projects
to control
stars
the environment in which they produce their
joystick.
work. Now, I'm not suggesting that's 5 days a week, but I'm
I
suggesting it
want
seems
it
to be
in
implausible
a
that
PNG format.
giving
So
people some degree of autonomy won't have benefits. So, but the interesting thing is, if you look at business, we've imposed loads of things on people: open plan offices, email, okay, Slack, Teams, etc., without any real investigation of the effect it has on productivity. But we don't really care because the staff don't really enjoy that, so we don't have to worry about it. But the second you have an experiment where the workforce seem to welcome it, suddenly
Met with a
everybody
degree of
goes, oh
suspicion.
my God, they've gone to Sainsbury's on Thursday lunchtime. Well, they're going to have to go to Sainsbury's at some time anyway.
okay.
Okay. Yes, okay, they're doing it during
Windows got
daylight when the
stuck.
store's quiet. Well, if they're working at 9 till 10, which they can do because they don't have to get up, they're very
And no
different. They're very
and no
different, by the way,
stroke.
but all of them have sort of conditions under which they can and can't write. And they vary. Some people demand complete silence. Some people go to a cafe because they want some
And
background
I'm
noise. But
also
what these people
creating
clearly
a
know
new
is
layer
that
with the stroke.
they can optimize their productivity by controlling the condition. By controlling the condition. Simply a question which is a wider question. So, I mean, email, which I mentioned earlier, is an interesting case in point in that it was assumed that there could be no finer form of communication other than immediate and free. And we automatically assume that faster is better. And one of the questions I raised, which I still think is a serious question, by the way, is do we need slow AI? Do we need slow Tinder? Do we need slow Rightmove? Now, let me explain. In most processes of search, if you look at consumers, what they do is they refine their preferences according to what they find out there. So they go into the property market, the dating market, the holiday market, and they have a set list of preferences to begin with. If you talk to any real estate agent, most people who deal with a human real estate agent end up buying or renting a property which meets remarkably few, if any, of their initial criteria. That's probably true of the people marry as well, I would guess. That if you ask someone effectively to write down, put it very simply, we think we know what we want, but we don't, is probably the simplest way in which, and the way we discover what we want is by a kind of exploratory process of discovery where we explore the market and what's available and what they cost and what we experience when having a look at a particular house or person then refines our preferences. And so this, what you might call the right move approach to decision making, which is define what you like, we give it to you, you buy one of those. Okay? Looks to us as if it's a perfectly sensible and efficient way of choosing a house. But actually, we don't see what we don't see. Actually, I was talking to someone this morning, I better not give away who they are, who discovered that Rightmove, there are areas of London which are holes. In other words, they don't fall into any predefined area on Rightmove. And property prices in those areas are disproportionately low because you can't search for any property that's in that area. Now, it might be if you're looking for a much bigger area, but in other words, they're not in Kensington, they're not in Notting Hill. In other words, they're these weird little islands of undefined location where you can actually find disproportionately cheap property because Rightmove is
Search
kind of
volume
blind
so
to their
low.
existence.
Wow.
You also have the problem, which is you can't sell a property apparently now for £850,000. Your estate agent or anybody else will tell you, no, you've got to make it say 810 or 890. Okay, that's fine. And the reason is that people search for property either 900,000 and down or 800,000 and up. And two things happen. One, they're less likely to find you at all because you're further away from their searching point. Secondly, if they do find you, The people who are searching 900 and down are a bit disquieted because they think you're too cheap, and the people who are searching 800 and up think you're a bit too expensive. So the extent to which what seems like a completely rational filtration process in online searching activity or decision making may be deeply flawed because it doesn't reflect the way in which we make decisions in the real world, which is we recalibrate what we want according to what we find.
We'll get back to talking to Rory in 1 minute, but first I need to tell you about Element. For the last 3 years, I've started every morning with Element. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything that you need and nothing that you don't. Each grab-and-go stick contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio of sodium, potassium, and magnesium with no coloring, no artificial ingredient.
Probably the women folk, the romantic life. That's what I really want. And whoosh, the art director disappears. And then the genie turns to the copywriter who goes, it's got to be Hemingway. You know, he enumerates a whole load of reasons why he'd like to be able to write and live like Hemingway, and whoosh, disappears. And then the genie turns to the account man and says, what about your wish? He says, I want those 2 guys back. I've got an important meeting in 2.5 hours. Okay, and there is that element where, and by the way, we could refer to this in everything from things like the shareholder value movement to business quarterly reporting, to the extent to which in advertising, too much money is spent on short-term performance advertising and too little is spent on long-term brand building. And that's not because it's necessarily more valuable, it's because it delivers measurable results faster. So I'll give you a fundamental problem. The FT wrote a very, very good article, specifically about the UK, but I think it applies more widely, which is how did customer service get so bad? Now, the point is, I felt like writing an article for the FT saying, well, if you occasionally acknowledged there was something interesting about business other than their quarterly financial forecasts, maybe the problem wouldn't have happened. If you actually discussed marketing occasionally, or customer experience, or the value of repeat business, if you looked at business from the point of view of what you might call a competition for customers rather than the competition for operational efficiencies and cost cutting, maybe we wouldn't have got into this total shitstorm, okay? But parking that rant for a moment, what seems obvious, okay, if you spend some money on acquiring customers, you can see whether it's working very quickly, and you can say very confidently, we spent X and the value of the acquired customers was Y. Let's say you want to make a corresponding investment in customer loyalty or customer experience. In other words, ensuring your existing customers have a great experience and so they come back, or dealing with problems very well so that your customers don't leave. Generally, you could perfectly well prove that that was cost effective. And indeed, my hunch would be that money spent there would be more cost effective in many cases than money spent on acquisition. However, it might take you 5 years to prove the efficacy of what you do, because it's slower. There are businesses which are fast. There are businesses which are slow. There are fast feedback businesses which you learn very quickly. An example, by the way, of very fast feedback business is comedy. You have an instant feedback mechanism from the audience, which basically tells you whether or not a joke is any good and whether you've landed it. And so apparently if you go to small comedy clubs, you'll occasionally be surprised because you're sitting there and there are only sort of 20 tables, and Chris Rock will come in. And effectively, it's all a bit weird, but he's trying out his new material for the next run. Before you go to bigger theatres, you try your material out on a small scale. And that's a fast feedback business. Amazon's a pretty fast feedback business, I would argue, because it has a very high degree of frequency of interaction with customers. Something like banking or insurance is unbelievably slow. I mean, if you're a bank and you piss off a customer, they don't even leave, by the way. They just go inert. Okay, it's not like people go, I'm going to close my current account and I'm going to walk off. They just open another current account somewhere else. Your current account, they don't buy any other products from you, but it's not the same as something like comedy, where you know within seconds whether you've landed something or not. And then there are also things which bother me, which is there are also things where I was talking to the guy who founded AO, and they have this lovely little system where when they deliver a washing machine or a dishwasher or whatever, if there are children in the house, because they deliver things themselves, they give the children a little branded bear. Okay. Now, as he said, perfectly right, you know, someone in finance is going to say, okay, what's the cost benefit analysis? Okay, on that. And his point is, it's impossible. You just have to make a judgment, subjective judgment, that the cost of the bear is trivial and the long-term effect is likely to be quite high.
What's that thing about the Bezos has got when anecdotes disagree with data? Most of the
The
time, I trust
anecdote
the
is usually
anecdote.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, the interesting thing with Bezos is he's going to. I mean, this is true of all those people. I mean, the sort of also very true of Elon Musk. They have a very unusual, sometimes highly, seemingly irrational thinking style. Speaking to someone who is very senior early on at Amazon, everybody except Bezos hated the idea of Amazon Prime. They hated the idea of Prime Video. Um, they didn't like the idea of Amazon Web Services. Now, Jeff has an interesting notion, which is what he calls a two-way door. If you talk to people, by the way, at Amazon, it's a very, very interesting. I'm not sure I could cope with it, to be absolutely honest, but it is a very, very interesting culture in terms of its approach to everything from meetings to decision making. What a two-way door is something where you can walk through the door, and if you don't like what you see, you can walk back. So a one-way door would be deciding to build a sort of 2 million square foot distribution center north of Memphis. Okay, once you've built that, it's difficult, not impossible, but it's difficult to reverse the decision. There you actually depend on a large degree of decision-making, rigor and rationality, and you need a really rigorous case. But in other cases, Jeff would say it's a two-way door. Try it. If it works, whoop-de-doo, that's great. If it doesn't work, we simply stop doing it. And to be honest, the trial possibly cost less than we would have spent just arguing about it if we were adopting a kind of purist approach. And I think it is important because why I think this is becoming vitally important is most business is probabilistic, but everybody in business wants to prove and pretend that it's deterministic. So every spreadsheet is in some ways an act of pretense because it's past information which you pretend has wonderful predictive value, as if it's kind of Laplace's demon, but it really doesn't, okay? Because weird shit happens out of nowhere all the time. And you have this fundamental problem, I think, where I think what distinguishes someone like Jeff is they're probabilistic thinkers. They just go, well, look, it probably won't work, but if it does, it will be spectacular. And they are in a position where they can take those decisions. In their defense, most people, I think, first of all, most people are promoted within business for their aptitude in solving reductionist, deterministic problems. How do you optimize this particular
There's a number in the far
system?
right-hand column of a spreadsheet somewhere next to a person's name that says, that was green this year. They made
Yeah,
the number go up.
absolutely right. Yeah. And actually, by the way, they probably, in most cases in business, you capture remarkably few of the gains from a bold decision, whereas you capture 100% of the blame if it goes wrong.
Correct, yeah.
So certain decisions which are what you might call, low chance of success, huge return, that's when people leave a business and become an entrepreneur because they realize that there's no point in actually doing those kind of things within a business because if things do well, you get a pat on the back and a bonus. If things go badly, you lose your job.
Speaking of things going badly, Jaguar's rebrand. What do you reckon?
Now, I'm in a small minority of people who would argue that before you criticize what someone does, you've got to understand what they're trying to do. And they have been completely forthright about the fact that they expect to lose all but 15% of their customers.
All but 15% of their customers.
Yeah, exactly, of their customers by moving to a much more upmarket, expensive car on an electric platform. And the argument I might make is that normally what they did is anathema to anybody who loves what you might call brand maintenance and brand management but by the way, they didn't change their name. Okay, they didn't call the car Zog. They still call it Jaguar. They still, contrary to rumors, have kept the leaping cat motif, etc. But what they've done is a very, very bold kind of, okay, in a sense, it's, look, bet the farm here. Okay, either we do this, we either succeed, in which case, great, or if we fail, to be honest, we were heading for disaster anyway, because you've got to be slightly careful. This is where, okay, when Dylan went electronic, okay, someone shouted Judas. The crowd in the Manchester Free Trade Hall absolutely hated it. Jaguar purists are going to hate anything. By the way, I've had 6 Jags, by the way, so I'm a loyal Jag enthusiast. I love the brand. And in many ways, I love a lot of the heritage about that brand. But equally, I love red telephone boxes, but I don't think it should be the BT logo. Okay, I love, what is it, Giles Gilbert Scott's design for red telephone boxes, but I'm also cognizant of the fact that I don't make many calls from payphones anymore. And I like Burberry Macs, but I'm also cognizant of the fact that because of various things like, central heating and Uber, not many people wear Macintoshes anymore, apart from Americans and flashers, in my experience. I was saying this the other day. Now, there are occasions where you might argue that electrification completely reshapes the competitive landscape for any car brand or any car manufacturer. And that what you have to do is a fairly dramatic pivot. I'm gonna join you in there.
Get that in you,
Yeah,
Rory.
absolutely.
Not enough stimulants in us today.
Exactly. Um, the There are cases, Kid A, for example, where bands produce an album that kind of alienates their existing fan base.
Mm.
Okay. You might argue that for Jaguar, this was a kind of Sergeant Pepper moment.
Yeah.
Okay. Where we've got, fundamentally, we've got to do. Am I right that there was a sort of Pet Sound Sergeant Pepper interplay going on, which was
I'm not sure.
who was
Were
first?
they on some trajectory toward slow motion irrelevance? Was that where they were
Well, the
going?
problem with Jaguar is lots of people loved the brand, but the people who loved the brand didn't necessarily buy Jaguars from new in particular.
Right.
And the new car buyer is a pretty niche audience to begin with. I thought the ad was deeply weird. It wasn't produced by an ad agency, by the way. It was, as someone said, it was less a branding exercise than a debranding exercise. You might make the contrary position, which is that it got millions and millions of people all over the world talking about Jaguar,
Yeah,
which hadn't happened for years. Now, I'm not one of those people, any publicity is good publicity. That emphatically is not true, okay? However, it did signal the fact, and by the way, it's not as if Jaguar hasn't done this before, okay, that a big change was afoot and that something remarkable was going to emerge. And the new car, by the way, which we've only just seen this morning, just for people listening.
I haven't seen it. What is it?
It's highly polarizing. It's an extraordinarily bold design. I personally like it. It seems to come in 2 colors, Miami pink and London blue.
Okay.
And the idea of a pink Jaguar is transgressive.
Heretical, yeah.
Heretical, exactly.
Yeah. I don't know whether you saw their Twitter was replying to people that were criticizing the campaign, whoever it is in the marketing department. They were being very non-apologetic about what they were doing. We don't care about what it was before. This is a new era, etc., etc. Really no airs or graces about trying to bring along the heritage or the.
Well, bear in mind, they have got an advantage. Now, if you look at it from the mindset of a game theorist, okay, if you're a volume car maker, electrification is goddamn terrifying. It's Clay Christensen and the innovator's dilemma, because you've got this huge sunk cost in both expertise and plant in producing internal combustion engine cars. You have this incredible engineering heritage, which, don't get me wrong, I love that stuff. I love steam trains, okay? I love red telephone boxes. I love driving gloves, E-types, girls from Lucy Clayton being taught how to get in and out of an E-type without showing your pants, okay, which apparently was something that finishing schools taught in the 1960s. All of that heritage is wonderful. But when technology comes in, okay, BlackBerry purists. Okay, this is a kind of rim moment where electrification fundamentally changes what it means to be a great car, because probably reliability, assuming the software doesn't go wonky, is going to be pretty damn good. Okay, now I recently had a bit of an issue where somebody said electric cars are expensive, and I kind of went, well, kind of depends, doesn't it? Because an electric Skoda will be more expensive currently than a petrol Skoda. But in performance and quietness and, and what you might call
Efficiency.
driving dynamics and efficiency, and, the electric Skoda is probably more akin to a petrol Audi than it is to a petrol Skoda.
Mm.
And the guy I met, who's the kind of electric car guru at Wired magazine, was asking this very same question, which is, okay, you've got a bunch of engineers, you've got a bunch of, if you think about it, the people who hated Dylan going electronic were folk people. I rather like folk music, but it doesn't really exist anymore, does it? Okay, I mean, you get the odd little.
So he saw the
throwback.
writing on the wall, but got shouted at for having been ahead of the curve.
Dylan had seen the writing on the wall and
Yeah.
decided, okay, and someone shouts Judas at him. I don't believe you. Play it fucking loud, as he replies.
Yeah.
Right now, you might argue that Jaguar's had a bit of a Dylan moment, which is, look, the things that made us great at Le Mans or in the age of Mike Hawthorne, fundamentally, what the hell is a car in 2030, 2040, when pretty much any car can deliver all the performance and indeed the quietness that a normal driver would hope for? Okay. And the Wired guy asked the question, is it going to be all about interiors? Is it going to be all about design? Is it going to, because, okay, how do you a very simple, tough question for Jaguar Land Rover is, we've got Chinese competition. We're never going to kind of undercut them, given labor costs, all the other costs that apply. How on earth do we carve out a niche for ourselves in this new future? Now, for a small car manufacturer and a small volume manufacturer, Jaguar's making about 60,000 a year, okay? They do have one advantage, which is they can completely pivot and start all over again. Whereas a large volume car maker has to manage this incredibly painful transition.
Complex supply chain, etc.
I mean, there's a whole German, Mittelstand, which supplies, fan belts and weird bits. All of that goes, because, I mean, this is one thing, by the way, which I think we ought to say about electric cars, which I think is missed by a lot of people, which is that if you look at a petrol engine, which is, it's a cathedral, it's a magnificent achievement, a really advanced, petrol engine. All of those things that move and rattle and bump and filter things and need to be replaced and the gearbox and all that stuff, all of those things exist for only one reason, which is to rotate a shaft to provide forward movement. Okay? Now, I'm Team Faraday here, because the way an electric motor works is you put electricity in, it rotates, which explains why, with the possible exception of your lawnmower, every single rotating, moving thing in your house uses electricity as the motive power, not petrol. Okay? There is a wonderful advertisement, by the way, which was done, I think it was either Renault. I think it was the Renault, the first electric Renault, which is equivalent to the Nissan Leaf, where they simply showed someone getting up in the morning and what would have been their electric toothbrush was actually powered by a little gasoline engine. And
That's very
they shaved, and there was sort of fumes coming out of their razor.
That's very good.
Okay, and it made that very simple point that nearly everything else in your life has gone electric. It was only a matter of time before battery technology, driven actually probably by the mobile phone industry, made this possible for the car. I mean, by the way, Henry Ford and Edison worked together on an electric car.
It's interesting, the resistance that people have, especially around vehicles. I guess second to a house, a car it's a type of identifier in a way. It's a status symbol. It's probably in terms of purchasing, it's going to be second largest in terms of your capital expenditure.
You notice, by the way, when you go back up north, that Northerners have nicer cars than Southerners do.
Why do you think that is?
Their houses are less expensive.
Right. But the price is the same of a Jaguar in Newcastle as a Jaguar in...
You get this extraordinary phenomenon in London, which really depresses me, and I've known people like this, who literally have a £1.2 million house and a £1,000 car.
Fiat Cinquecento or something.
It pains I mean, come on. I mean, the car is a much greater thing than the house is, looked at as a piece of technology, okay? Are you a car fan, or are you one of these weird people who just like young people Ubers around the place?
So I have single-handedly kept Uber liquid in Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
But no, I have I think I said to you last year, I was threatening to get a Camaro, and sure enough, I did at the start of this year. Yeah, the only way that I can non-ironically buy an American muscle car is when I live in Texas with an American driving license.
You just need it to fit in.
Correct. Well, yeah. I mean, it's par for the course. You know, if
Yeah.
somebody drives an American pickup truck, a Ford Raptor, or whatever the equivalent, a Ranger, I think they call it over here. If somebody drives that over here, you feel like they're cosplaying. If somebody drives it in America, you think,
Perfectly
oh,
normal.
that's cute compared to the Tundra next to you and the six bed whatever.
There's a Ford F350. I think there might be a 450, isn't there, as well?
It goes all the way up, dude.
Yeah.
In Texas, there's ones where, you know, some guy will happily throw his kids in the back and take them to the park on a Saturday morning, or pull what appears to be an articulated lorry behind him on a Monday morning. Like, he's very versatile in that way.
You
One
haven't
other
got a
thing,
big motorhome yet. That would be one of my temptations if I moved to Texas.
an
would get
RV
one of
would
those-
would be quite nice. One other thing that I've been thinking about since I've been staying here, I'm at the Royal Garden Hotel in Kensington, and on the front door there's maybe 2 or 3 doormen, and it's not so much of at least the places that I tend to stay in America, it doesn't seem to be so much of a trait. Yet over here, it could be replaced. I've heard you talk about this before. It could be replaced with an opening door. It could be replaced with a series of sensors and buttons and switches. But it's not necessarily about that. It's about the experience of the doorman being outside.
Yeah, what you're doing there is the old consulting trick of you define the doorman in terms that make him most amenable to automation. So you basically go function of doorman, opening door, replace the doorman with an infrared automatic door mechanism, lay claim to the savings, but an awful lot of consulting activity. Do you know management consulting firms engage in this thing which is called gain sharing? Now, I cannot believe that anyone in a company would sign up to this agreement because it's appalling, where they effectively say, we will effectively define the costs we have saved you, and we want you to pay us a proportion of the cost savings which we identify. But as Roger L. Martin says, any idiot can cut costs. The real skill comes in cutting costs without actually losing long-term revenue as a consequence. And so short-term cost cutting is dangerously easy. This is where I come back to that point of we're too impatient to be intelligent, that intelligence and wisdom is slow, whereas seeming logic is fast. You can seemingly logically replace the doorman with a automatic door opening device. What you're failing to notice is the other tacit and subtle human functions which are dormant, which might be recognition, hailing taxis, also security, okay? Basically, you don't want drunkards sleeping in your entrance to your hotel. And simply maintaining the status of the hotel. That arriving at a hotel, which is notionally a 5-star hotel, and kind of, just being met with an automatic door.
Even if
in
it's very
London would
fancy
seem-
automatic
And
door.
Americans have come to Americans want a London hotel. Okay, if you take American or for that matter, Asian tourists, they want London to be a bit Londony with a guy in a top hat. Okay,
Yep.
I mean, a friend of mine booked some friends from Los Angeles in the Hempel Hotel, which was I don't think it exists anymore. It was in Bayswater, but it was kind of like an LA hotel, which is in London W2, and they were gutted. These Los Angelinos. I mean, they were very cool people, right? But they said, if I come to London, I want horse brasses, I want hunting prints.
Yeah.
Okay, and so there are all these nuances which I think are very, very easy to lose because costs are quantifiable and instantaneous, and opportunity costs, lost opportunities, lost revenue, that's slow and it's generally hard to actually quantify. A lovely story about this, which I wrote about actually in The Spectator, but people won't mind hearing it once more, I hope. I'm driving along this dual carriageway on the Welsh borders, and we wanted to buy some milk, and the motorway service station appeared to be closed. All the lights were off. The kind of, the petrol fuel logo was off. The fuel prices were off. It looked, like, as I said, like the Bates Motel. It was completely kind of unlit. My wife said, "Oh, bugger, it's closed." We needed to buy her bloody lacto-free milk because she's convinced she has lactose intolerance. But I said, "No, hold on a second. Now, I remember going there on Christmas Day. I'm sure that a place that opens on Christmas Day wouldn't close at 7 o'clock in the evening. Let's just go in anyway. And sure enough, we find a fully functioning 24-hour store with, I think, might have been a Starbucks or something as well, or a Burger King. And we're the only customers. And it's hardly surprising we're the only customers because to everybody else on the road, it looks like the place is closed. So I go up to the guy behind the till. I'm a marketing person. I think, you're pissing away revenue here. This is insane. There are, every 10 minutes, there are 3 cars driving past going, oh shit, you're closed. So I go up to the guy behind the till. I go, why are the lights off on the road? And he goes, oh yeah, I think the guy on the last shift forgot to turn them on. I go, okay, turn off fucking, there was no urgency. Now, it occurred to me when I left, and the lights were still off when I left. Okay, if that guy had nicked a Lion bar at 2 o'clock in the morning and been picked up on CCTV, right, there would have been a kind of inquiry. He might have lost his job. There would be extreme disciplinary action. Cost of the Lion bar is about, £1 in lost revenue. Okay, the cost of leaving the lights off is probably, certainly in revenue terms,
£200 an hour.
it might be £1,000 that night.
Yep.
Could have been more. Okay, but sins of omission are much less. Dogs that don't bark in the night are much less easy to identify than sins of commission, and we correspondingly get much less upset by them. And so, what you often end up doing is there are a lot of things like giving a soft toy to someone when you deliver their tumble dryer. Nobody would. Can you imagine a world? I'd love this world, but I can't really imagine it, where someone goes, "What, you mean you deliver things to people with kids and you don't give them some branded merch?" Okay, are you serious? What a fucking idiot!
The anchoring and set point that we have behind that.
But no, if for some reason there was a cost attached to something, as opposed, so opportunity costs, finance people basically pretend opportunities aren't there because they're too nebulous as far as they're concerned to pay any attention to. But then you wonder why companies aren't growing. And the reason is because they're fixated on the efficient performance of what they're already doing and completely uninterested in what they're missing out on.
Trust really is everything when it comes to supplements. A lot of brands may say they're top quality, but few can actually.
A really interesting question of what should we stop doing? I mean, I'm very interested. One of the reasons I'm very interested in flexible work is it occurs to me that companies looked at in one way are actually very inefficient. I did actually get our finance department. I said, forget about the usual method of financial reporting. Okay. How much does a client have to pay us in fee income in order for my younger colleague, and by the way, the fact that they're younger is relevant because they're not kind of vested in the property market as someone my age is. Okay? In order for my younger colleague to go out and have a curry. And what you look at is the client pays us, then there are various overheads and costs, and there's HR and finance, and there's office space, and there's all that other expense. Okay. Then finally, the money trickles down to the salary of the person actually doing the work once the kind of landlord has taken their cut and the shareholders have taken their cut and everything else, trickles down to my colleague. Then, from that incremental amount of money, 40% will probably go in tax. Okay. Then, of the remainder, 40%, maybe 50% will go in housing costs and transportation costs, commuting costs. So it works out that in order to buy my colleague, a trip to the Koh-i-Noor, okay, a client has to give us about 250 quid. Now, my argument is, if you could get rid of all that shit and just do the work on Zoom, okay. In other words, the people. This seems to be an extraordinary extent to which, in large organizations, the people who are creating the value, the people who are doing the real work. I mean, it's amazing that capitalism functions at all when you look at the
Okay,
extent
my
to
mic was
which,
muted. Shit,
money
man.
goes in, and then incidental costs, particularly property. I'm Georgist,
Yep.
okay, particularly property costs. Chip away at all of that. And so the actual incentive for the person to perform valuable work and the reward they receive for it has mostly disappeared.
You were
by the
talking about
time it
feedback
reaches
loops
them.
earlier on. The feedback
Yeah.
loop is so slow and it's so molested from what goes in to what actually comes out, the amount of time. You're on 30 days, you're on 60 days, you're on 60 days from the end of the month.
You got it. Mm.
It's the big problem on the back end, for instance, with podcasting platforms. So YouTube has gamified not only for the audience but also for the creators. You have this little number that's 1 of 10, so it compares
Okay,
where this
we've
video
got
is
some
now
possible.
since publish in terms of the duration of time, 30 minutes,
Okay,
an hour,
okay,
Got it.
2
okay.
hours,
This
however
is
long,
not discussed.
with other videos, and it tells you where it ranks. First of 10, wow, this is better than your last 10 videos at the same amount of time.
At the same period after.
Exactly.
Now, obviously, some things are slow burn and some things are
Some things
fast
pick up
burn.
afterward, but
Yeah,
you,
yeah, yeah.
generally it's a pretty good
You-
indication.
So it's a pretty good indicator, is it? 'Cause
Yeah.
you do get the sort of Shawshank Redemption phenomenon, don't you?
Where it kicks
yeah,
in, it kicks
where
in
it
toward the
kicks
end.
in late,
But you
yeah.
don't have that. You don't have that on Spotify. You don't have that on Instagram. You don't have that on most other platforms because they're not quite as creator focused. And yeah, the power of feedback loops is fucking unbelievable. Speaking of you mentioned there
Got a
some
cold.
inefficiencies within the system and some changes to do with Britain. Obviously, 2 million people just signed a petition to. We are
The movement
disgruntled with
stopped.
Mr. Starmer, or Sir Starmer. Uh, we want to make some changes there. We've seen a lot of sort of turmoil and stuff across this year, generally 2024 in the UK. What do you make of the state of sort of British culture, the milieu that we're in at the moment?
I did make the joke that voting Labour and having a chancellor who's come from the Bank of England is a bit like going on a Club 1830 holiday and taking your
Maybe
parents along, which it
let's
kind of defeats
remove
the
this
object of the
layer and
exercise a
I'll
bit. In that
use
one of the
something
things
else.
I think we would like to
Drifting
see as
factor,
voters, and
drifting
I'm
brake
perfectly happy to give
factor,
this government a
drag.
I
Let's
think
remove
you
the
have to give the
drag
people
first.
the benefit of a few years before you get
Acceleration
pissy about it.
increase.
I mean, that is actually. I'd be interested to know who's signing that petition. Is it people on the left who are just disappointed? Is it reform voters? Is it conservatives? I don't know.
Right now nothing works.
Who is it who feels most kind of cheated? I mean, you've got to remember that there are an awful lot of people who didn't vote for them if you consider the size of their majority, okay? They've got a massive majority, but the share of the popular vote was fairly
I'm not sure if you can be disgruntled with somebody that you didn't vote for.
Well,
ChatGPT is such
it's
a
interesting
shitty
who's demanding a kind
app.
of run again. Some of the things interest me because I think a lot of people know that there's fundamental inequity, intergenerational inequity, which is
Let's
because
check.
salaries are taxed very highly and wealth, particularly capital gains from your main property, are barely taxed at all. And that leads to, I think, a kind of absurdity, which is that one piece written about this is it's
Acceleration
not
became
actually
so high.
intergenerational inequality that's the problem.
Still there's
It's going
drag.
to be intragenerational inequality when people start inheriting houses or not inheriting houses, because you can literally have the situation where you can work incredibly hard for 30 years and reach a position of some eminence in a business or in an institution. And because your parents happen to live in an area of low house prices or didn't own a house at all, you're still living somewhere crap. Whereas your underlings, whose parents lived in Surbiton or Kensington or whatever it may be, okay, are basically swanning around in palaces, going on cruises all the time. And that does strike me as a fundamental flaw, that we've created this system where unearned income, which is not really particularly meritocratic or inherited income, is treated incredibly generously.
I think it's
Whereas
not the
earned income, I
jerkiness.
think
I think it's
top,
the frame rate.
if I'm right, is it the top 5% of taxpayers pay 50% or 60% of all
I
income
think
tax?
so in America. It may be the same here too.
Probably the same here. I mean, that's, by the way, it's a kind of statistical artifact. You usually find
users.
those power law effects.
Yep.
So it's not quite as weird as it sounds, but nonetheless, that is quite weird when you think about it. Now, one thing I thought was extraordinarily interesting as an idea is, you know that chap who wrote The Trading Game,
Gary Stevenson.
Gary Stevenson. He makes a very valid point. Okay, whatever else you think, which is that nearly all economic models use single representative agents to populate the models, which is they
Maybe let's
assume that the
increase
person
the
whom they're
drag.
trying to optimize for is an average of everybody. And as a consequence, inequality doesn't feature in those models because you're simply dealing with an average. And so if Bill Gates walks into a football stadium, everybody in the football stadium is actually a millionaire suddenly, on average, okay? It's not it's simply not a reliable thing to do.
Mm.
And one of the things that strikes me as genuinely horrific is the extent to which I think the tax system is kind of gerontophilic in that, there are huge, huge concessions in terms of pensions that are given out, huge concessions in terms of inherited property, huge concessions in terms of capital gains and existing property. You also get this utter absurdity, which fascinates me, which is that uh, there are 5-bedroom, 4-bedroom houses which have 1 or 2 pensioners knocking around in them. Nothing wrong with that, you might argue, except those pensioners are often skint. Okay? Now, it's a weird kind of way of being a millionaire that you live in a massive house that you don't entirely need. Now, by the way, if you simply saved a hell of a lot of money and you just like living in a big fuck-off house, well, you can argue that's kind of, you're entitled to that.
Mm.
But you literally get people living in these extraordinary houses who are, you know, going to Lidl and worried about the price of lemons.
Yeah.
Okay, pretty weird. If someone told you when you're a kid, you're going to be a millionaire one day, but you're going to be really worried about where you buy lemons, you'd think this is a pretty weird
Well, what's
world.
that?
So, I mean, one great idea, Roger L. Martin's idea, is that you should, at the moment, you get your first 10,000 or whatever it is of your annual salary is tax-free every year. Roger L. Martin, a Canadian, proposed that that should be a lifetime tax allowance. So the first
£250,000.
250,000 Canadian dollars you earn in your life
Yep.
is tax-free, after which the tax system kicks in. Now, that would be extraordinarily beneficial to younger people who need the money more and who could build up some... Actually, you don't need that much in the way of savings. I mean, one of the interesting things about the benefits to wealth
Okay.
is
Oh,
that
fuck.
there are inflection points.
Mhm.
That
First house deposit.
well, actually, having £5,000 you can
Unusable.
call on in a crisis is a really, really, is a really, really big difference. It fundamentally changes what people can do. I mean, very interesting thing. When I first went to America, I think I was 29, roughly. And I remember thinking, I'm glad I never came here when I was skint. Okay.
It's a bad country to be poor in.
It's a terrible country in which not to have $10,000 sitting there.
Correct.
One bad thing goes wrong, and suddenly you're in Leavenworth doing a 9 stretch. Right? And so so there are these inflection points where you can take people. One of them I always think is that when you start earning a bit above median income, you notice that actually it's quite nice because things are priced for people who are a bit poorer than you. Televisions, for example, flat screen TVs. Let's be honest, okay, let's imagine that flat screen TVs cost £5,000. Okay, we both would have bought one by now, but we don't have to pay £5,000 because they're priced for sale to people who earn a lot less than we do. And so, I think there are these interesting inflection points in earnings. Now, what's really interesting, by the way, and this fascinates me, is the extent to which pre-2020, the only real point of negotiation with your employer was how much they paid you. Because it was assumed that you worked a 5-day week. It was assumed that you came into an office or some other place of work
Shitty
for 5
script.
days, and
Once
that
again.
you had hours and you had a place. Those were non-variables, and the only variable was your salary.
Mm.
Now, to what extent will people start to practice lifestyle arbitrage, which is to say, well, I could work for Goldman Sachs in London for 200 and something, whatever, but actually 120,000 in Lisbon, okay, and a pretty good broadband connection.
Earning in pounds and spending in pesos.
And the number of people who might simply, I mean, by the way, that applies within the UK. There are a lot of people
You
who
could live
go,
in Newcastle and get 10
Well,
times the
change
house
the
for the
It's a
same
sad
money.
thing, actually. My daughter went to Newcastle University, adores the city, quite rightly. I've been up there. It's fantastic. You know that better than I do, okay? It's a glorious place which gets the balance. I think it gets a lot of things absolutely right in terms of the kind of yin and yang of a city. It's manageable in size, but it's not boring, remotely boring.
Yep.
It has beautiful architecture, but it also has utility, and it's got a coast, okay? My daughter actually said, the tragedy is, in a way, I didn't really want to move to London, which is bloody expensive. If I could have persuaded 6 of my university friends to stay in Newcastle, we all would have stayed.
Tragedy of the Commons. You
It's
haven't
the
got
tragedy of the Commons, which is that you're forced to go along with this kind of majority.
Let's use this. .02 drift factor. I did not change 20. Yeah, let's try it.
Consensus.
You also can be on
It's
the
a winner takes all effect.
You can be on the receiving end of that too, though. You can benefit from that, which I have been in Austin. Why does any scene appear anywhere? Any scene appears anywhere because people go. No one's really too sure why, and because people go, more people go, and then before you know it, you've got the hottest new place.
I suppose it was Rogan in Austin, was it?
He made one of the big ones, but before him was Lex Friedman. I think before Lex was Michael Malice. Before him was Aubrey Marcus. You know, you to track it back to wherever you want, and now everybody has a fucking second holiday home. From Jason Calacanis coming over from Investor Bay, West Coast bullshit world to come and now live on a ranch, wear a cowboy hat. So yeah, it's
Is it? Can I be really mischievous here?
Get it in.
Okay, and I always thought this is why Brits like living in LA, which is that secretly everybody over the age of 35 wants to live in suburbia. Okay,
correct.
But in London, it's just not cool. Okay. I mean, if I took my younger colleagues, I couldn't get them to move to Bromley if I put a gun to their head. Secretly, I suspect they want a little bit of, a bit of lawn and a bit of a place to park a car.
Yes. Oh, so you've got a blend
but
of the
LA,
two.
it's totally cool to live in a suburban house, isn't it?
Same in
that's
Austin.
where everybody lives.
Same in Austin. Honestly, the suburbs, the olden style suburbs. So what's up north, which is the Domain, is kind of a soulless hellscape that was created for people that work at tech companies to not have to go far to go to the office. But when you're...
A few things. It was also built after the invention of the car.
Yeah.
So the distance from the centre matters a lot less. By the way, it should have... I don't normally criticise the US, but you should create high-speed rail to someone like San Antonio, shouldn't you? You could link a couple of places.
I think the rumor is that Austin and San Antonio are growing at such a clip that they're going to merge into one huge megacity eventually. It's only, without traffic, I think it's only 50 minutes-ish from sort of the edge of one to the edge of another. And when you think about, we've got this land, we might as well expand it.
You've got another advantage in Austin, which is interesting because you saw in the property crash of 2008, you saw very dramatic property crashes in Vegas, Phoenix, Austin. And the reason is they're unusual in that they're not on a lake and they're not on a coast. And so they can expand in 4 directions. Which I know that sounds... San Francisco can't, okay? If you're on a kind of peninsula...
How does that impact the price?
Because simply there's 4 times as much land... Actually, more than that, because area expands at the square of distance.
Yes.
So you've only got to go a mile further out, and you get, what is it? The square of the distance.
A fuck ton more land.
Okay, so there isn't really much scarcity. Combine that with the fact that they were designed for the car. Right. So I love Phoenix is fantastic because they actually synchronize they probably do this in Austin. They synchronize the traffic lights. So when you drive in at night, you can ride the green wave. Have you done this?
Well, I certainly know the way that traffic flows work, that if you hit a red light, you're more likely to hit subsequent red lights. But
that's it.
Right. Okay. I thought that was...
There's something called riding the green wave, where if you obey the speed limit, you can basically keep going through...
That's only if you hit the first green, though. If you hit the first red, you think, I'm fucked here for every one that I'm going to hit. Well,
you and your massive muscle car won't be...
Yeah, exactly. I can try and go as quickly as possible. This episode is brought to you by Function. Staying on on top of your health requires
How many
Very rich people
ads?
aren't that bothered about being able to vote because they only get one vote, which is the same as the teacher down the street. Why would I want something I can't have more of than somebody else?
Yeah.
So it doesn't surprise me, by the way, that actually very rich people are often quite drawn to
Where's the
authoritarian
date
spaces because
method
they don't suffer the
on the semi
downside,
camera?
okay?
Hmm.
But they gain, in some respects, they can profit from the upside.
China lost about 13 to 15,000 this year. The UK lost 10,000-ish millionaires leaving. But we have 3% of the population of China. We have about 5% of the
Always
population of India, and more millionaires left the UK. Second in the world in millionaire exits. We have the same number of universities in the top 10 as America do, but only 20% of the number of startup founders and entrepreneurs. So why? What is it that's going on? And
One thing you could do, and the Portuguese are playing this game. I mean, a lot of people have. I mean, I had an interesting conversation, okay, which is that where people spend wealth is increasingly, I think, slightly undesirably, okay, being detached from where people earn it. Now, I grew up in the Welsh Valleys. My Scottish ancestors moved down to South Wales because it was the Dubai of the late 19th century. Coal money. It was actually booming. I mean, my great grandfather, I think, moved down to Edinburgh, intending to
let's
join
check.
from a croft, intending to join the police force, and was told, "Don't bother here. South Wales is where you need to go to make money." But the people, including the coal owners, lived somewhere within. They didn't live
Okay,
next to the mine, but they lived somewhere
let's
within the
check
proximity
now.
of that thing. And I remember my grandmother, who's not remotely left-wing, okay, quite the opposite, standing on Cardiff Station, looking around. And by the way, Cardiff was a lot grimmer then. Back then, this was in the
Maybe
70s,
the
than it
update
is
is the
now. It's rather
problem.
nice now, lovely. Okay, and saying, just think of the money that's been made here and spent in more exotic places. I always remember that. It was a kind of strangely kind of socialistic sentiment from a pretty right-wing grandmother. And what you see, I remember having this conversation with people who are responsible for Invest in Kent. And I said, to be honest, it doesn't really matter whether you attract businesses to Kent. If you can get people who earn money in London to come and live in Kent and their families all spend their money here, okay,
Make it party.
that's good enough. And so when you have this detachment of where people make money and where people spend it, one thing the Portuguese are doing, they're proposing lower tax rates for people under 30. They're proposing these nomad visas. Lisbon, very cool, very attractive city. Likewise, Porto, attracts people who like kite surfing and other excitement.
Italy's got this new flat tax. You pay 100 grand, and that's all the tax that you pay for the entire year. That's a new one from them.
So, I mean, we don't seem. Now, the other thing you can do is just make the place one hell of an entertaining place. Now, I've always argued. I can't get anybody to disagree with this. I don't think pubs, cafes, and restaurants should pay rates or taxes because they're actually a social space. When you spend money,
Between
this is
camera
interesting,
updates
which is that
and
economics holds it as kind of this is my Gary Stevenson,
Yeah.
which is, as well as these kind of single representative agent models which don't understand inequality,
Okay,
By the way, really bad inequality is bad for everybody. It's bad for the very rich. Okay, you want people. The ideal place in which you live is one in which you're surrounded by a few people who are richer than you and quite a few people who are a bit poorer than you, but not
so much that they
poor.
cause a ton of havoc.
No, well, it's not. It's not just a havoc. You want actually social spaces to be roughly commensurate with where you are.
Cohesive.
And if you live in a place where you have 10 rich people, okay, and everybody else is massively poor, the 10 rich people got nowhere to go to eat.
There's a fascinating study that came out of Australia. Candice Blake did this. They correlated wealth inequality with self-objectification as measured by sexy selfies online. And wealth inequality is positively correlated. The level of inequality within a local ecology is positively correlated with sexy selfies.
By men or women or both?
Just women.
Just women.
Yeah, so self-objectification, self-beautification, sexy selfies online is positively correlated with inequality.
What's their explanation for
okay.
that?
Proposed
This
mechanism
feels good.
is that in a high
Maybe
wealth
we needed
inequality
some soft zones, I
environment,
guess.
women can see not only how high they can climb, but how low they could fall with a potential partner.
So the effort you have to make in terms of Botox and
all the rest of it.
yeah, there's a very
Finally,
interesting theory about that, which is
finally something that works.
why Neiman Marcus. There's an academic paper.
Ah,
Why Neiman Marcus started in Texas, not in Boston. And there are two explanations where you get
So it was just
more males than females. The luxury goods
dead
thing
zones.
is important,
Yep.
but also where you get a high degree of anonymity. So in other words, you had a lot of people moving in who can effectively reinvent themselves
Zones
as high status
and
individuals. Okay. Now, just to give an example,
camping.
luxury goods only work really when you have an audience of strangers. Okay. So had I gone into the pub in Monmouth, where I grew up, which is a market town, with sunglasses with Moschino written across
So
them, okay, on inch-high
the
letters,
movement is
I
fixed.
would have been the subject of
Let's
complete
create
ridicule. Everybody
some
knew where I lived, what I did, what
assets
my
then.
parents did, what I earned,
Okay.
etc. And this would have been regarded as an utterly ridiculous thing to
But the
do.
signal can
So
be
Okay.
stress tested.
But
that
if I go to
joystick doesn't
Miami,
look good.
I don't know, that
I'm
probably,
gonna add a little bit
so, I mean,
whiteness
you're
to this,
undoubtedly right
I guess.
in that a lot of these kind of display and signaling behaviors are contextually determined by the setting.
There's another one that I'll
Um,
give you. It's called the environmental security hypothesis.
Yeah, I think
So this is human behavioral ecology, which is kind of twinned with evolutionary psychology.
Got it.
It's a little bit more concerned with how we react to the local environment around us, how we sort of interact and so on. There is some pretty good
this
evidence
much
to suggest that
looks
men
good.
prefer bigger women when the economy is bad. So men under resource stress seem to prefer bigger women, and this can be tracked in a bunch of different ways.
There's a
First,
strange hemline index as well, isn't there? Which is that you in the 20s you had very thin androgynous women with short skirts, and then when you have a depression, the whole thing slightly changes.
yep. Well, it's the again the proposed mechanism is that in a time of resource scarcity ancestrally, you would have wanted a woman that looks like she could survive a couple of
A
months.
bad winter.
Yeah, exactly. A couple of months without a good harvest,
Yeah,
and that seems to have carried over now. So two really interesting ones, kind of as you've said there, as the economy wavers up and down, it seems to be that the
I
preferred
think the
body size
joystick needs to
overall,
be
the sort of
bigger.
ideal
Well,
body that
let's
women have,
change the pixel per
also
unit
fluctuates.
to
But they did a
20.
really great study on university
Okay,
students in the canteen
that doesn't
hall,
work.
and before and after they ate, they showed
I'll
them
just
different
increase the size
women's
of the
body
image.
shapes. And prior to eating, they preferred bigger women, and after eating, they preferred thinner women. That there is something about even the sort of ambient hunger, resource scarcity, which impacts the environmental security hypothesis, as it's known.
This is fascinating because undoubtedly, I mean, by the way, I think, by the way, I'm a huge enthusiast for evolutionary psychology, but sometimes I think it jumps the shark a little bit in terms of,
Okay,
I think these
okay, the
things are
speed is too much.
contributory, but I don't think what sometimes happens in evolutionary psychology is that this is believed to be the only game in town. So, for example, that data on women having
Five.
affairs on with one of your earlier guests,
Mm-hmm.
which seemed to validate one hypothesis rather than another.
Mm-hmm.
And there is indeed a valid evolutionary explanation for what they claim that the data shows. But I would argue there were also 5 other possible explanations
Mm-hmm.
for that phenomenon,
Mm-hmm.
not least more attractive men are likely to be out there playing the field more simply because their opportunities are greater. And therefore, the
Okay,
fact that women tended
need
to have
to
affairs with
increase
people
the dead
more
zone
attractive but not necessarily
weight.
richer than the people with whom they were in a long-term relationship with could be explained by multiple
I'll
things.
do this
I knew that you'd
later.
come and do a quiz at the
I'm
end.
gonna create some assets
Talk to
now.
me about your assessment of Trump's marketing campaign.
Mm,
Um,
Let me see.
I
I
don't
need
think you
to
need
add
to
the
do that
minimap
because
first.
actually what he did was
I'll add a
fairly
green
consistent
screen behind this,
with what
a
he'd done
green
before. He
background.
had probably Elon was a little bit of a um, clever
Signal boost.
signal boost. I think what you really have to analyze is the Democrats as a marketing entity and how spectacularly bad they are. In that you end up the problem with living in a very tight urban bubble. I did a talk with Rick Rubin for the Christmas edition of The Spectator.
He's great.
Absolutely glorious man. And he made the interesting point that he had a kind of interestingly bipolar childhood and that he spent weeks on Long Island, which was effectively a blue collar existence. And then he spent his weekends in Manhattan with an aunt who was a kind of
I
creative
think
services
much
director for
greener, I
Estee
guess.
Lauder, was taken to concerts, the usual cultural events, books, poetry, etc. And the
I'm gonna close the podcast right now. Let's play some music, I guess. Mm, let's improve the track also. Adding a mini map to Unity. There's a blog about it. Inside the canvas, add an empty child object. Raw image. It's too loud. This could be our mini camera. Let's let's reduce the damping a little bit. What to do now? Where was the blog? UI. It's using the mask element. Yeah, I got it. We needed to make a render texture. Let's do it right here. Yeah. Mini map cam. Whatever. New camera. How do I change the size? So this would be our mini map. Mm, Okay, we've got it. वो छोटा नहीं है. कैमरा तो बड़ा है. चलो काम काम हो गया अपना तो. नो मिनी मैप. बाय. अच्छा वो डिसेबल कर दिया है इसलिए. ओह, finally. But we can't see ourselves. Oh, there am I. No, this won't work. I guess I'll do this and put it inside the player. Where's the player? Player is right out at this place. Can he look at the player or not? Let's check it now. If this works or not. No, so now we know there's a turn coming. This movement in the joystick is too shitty. Maybe the turn rate is too shitty. Let's make it 200. Let me try the joystick. Okay, this is fine. Let's create a racetrack. So there is a racetrack builder. That's fine. I can use it. Oh, it's that easy. Nice, man. Let me try out some design. I want to build a big racetrack, so this much should be fine. Okay, this is something. अच्छा हाँ, एक चीज़ तो मैंने देखी ही नहीं, रेस ट्रैक तो बन गया, एक्सपोर्ट कैसे करूँ? टॉप सेशन, let me turn on the D&D mode. Clear all. Unity XR toolkit. No, don't need this. Well, I've got a track in front of me. Let's just clip this out. Take it to not this. A bigger file. Image trace. 1, 2, 3. Expand. Remove the other areas like this. This one also not needed. So we've got a track with us. Let's just improve these areas. Okay. Oh, something happened. Yeah. Enough. Create another one. Put this one over another. Turn off the fill. Turn on the stroke. Let's increase some strokes. We've got a nice racetrack now. Nice. And we need some lines in between. To do that, me check. Dotted lines in Illustrator. Okay, inside the strokes, I think so. Dashed lines, we have the option. Okay, let's duplicate this one. No, not this one, the stroke one. I guess we'll have something. Yeah, we have dashed lines. Change the width. Maybe I'll increase this amount. 40, I guess. Yeah, enough. Where is the dashed line? Okay. Ungroup. Can't go edit. Release. Okay. So we have the lines. Let's increase the size of the line. Okay, at some part we need to change the length, I guess. एडजस्टमेंट तो चल जाएगा। अभी एक बार ये नया ट्रैक को यूज करके देखते हैं। फाइनली वी गॉट अ ट्रैक विद अस। अब क्या करना है अपन, पहले डैश्ड लाइंस और तो के बिना रोड को अपन एक्सपोर्ट करते हैं। एक्सपोर्ट एज रोड एंड JPEG, maybe a PNG, sorry, and yeah, I think the size should be much bigger. Let me try to increase this. And twin imagine, okay, nice. Okay, nothing big. यहाँ पे रीएडजस्ट करना पड़ेगा 400 maybe. Yeah, works. And let's increase the stroke size. थोड़ा सा एडजस्टमेंट फिर करना पड़ेगा। Nice. The road and the operation cannot be completed because of an annual error. Okay, शायद ज़्यादा ही बड़ा हो गया, इतना छोटा मे बी। ओके, कैनवास बड़ा करना पड़ेगा। क्या प्रॉब्लम क्या है? एक्सपोर्ट एज फिर से अननोन एरर, छोटा ही कर देंगे। ओके, ये हो गया। स्ट्रोक्स को भी अलग से कर रहा हूँ ताकि उनको बॉर्डर यूज कर सकूँ एज अ बॉर्डर। चलो एक नया मैप है अपने पास, एक बार नेट पे दूसरा एसेट भी ढूंढ लेते हैं। 2D top down कार। ये अच्छा आर्ट स्टाइल है, इसी टाइप का कुछ चाहिए था। खोल लेते हैं। अभी के लिए मैं ऐसे ही कर रहा हूँ, मैं फिर खुद के एसेट्स बनाऊंगा बाद में। है ना। चलो अपने पास रोड आ गए, क्या आ गए, इनको ऐड करते हैं। अरे वो लाइंस थोड़ी बेकार हो गई। Shit, छोटी चाहिए और लाइन, और रेस ट्रैक और बड़ा चाहिए। हम्म, 400 ज़्यादा हो गया, मे बी 100, इतना ठीक है। एक्सपोर्ट हो जाना बस। हाँ फाइनली हम बॉर्डर भी ओपन कर देते हैं, एक्सपोर्ट। चलो यहाँ से थोड़े से एसेट डिलीट कर देते हैं जो हमें नहीं चाहिए। नए एसेट्स आ गए, इंपोर्ट। हाँ ठीक है। थोड़ा सा बड़ा कर देते हैं, स्केल के बारे में देखेंगे बाद में। प्ले करके देखते हैं। बॉर्डर पे पॉलीगॉन कोलाइडर, एक और चीज़ करी जा सकती है पर वो बाद में करेंगे। कार को भी एक बार ले लेते हैं। आई लाइक दिस वाइट कार। इमेज ट्रेस डिफॉल्ट ना, 3 कलर्स 1 2 3 ना, it doesn't look good. Sketch art shitty, shades of grey might that. Nice. Remove all of this. Let's change the grays to the whites. ये तो ठीक है, जो सेम ग्रे है उसको वाइट करते हैं। येलो ब्लू वाला वाइट, इसको भी थोड़ा सा डार्क करते हैं। dark. Car looks fine. Fine. Export. Where's the player? This is the player. Switch out the sprites and here we go. स्केल का प्रॉब्लम है. क्या किया जाए? सबसे पहले तो इसको 100 कर दो. मेरी साइज थोड़ा सा बड़ा हो जाएगा. हुआ तो है थोड़ा बहुत. एल में इसको ऐसे कर दो. फाइव और सॉरी 0.5. करो. बैटरी. ये ट्रैक थोड़ा सा अजीब है. हार्ड भी है. नाइस. दैट्स ओके. 3.6K वर्टिसेस बहुत ज़्यादा नहीं है. आई थिंक मिनी मैप वाला कैमरा बहुत ज़्यादा ही दूर है. इसको और क्लोज करना पड़ेगा. ड्रैग बहुत ज़्यादा है इसका. स्लाइड कर रही है कार. ड्राइव नहीं कर रही है. चलो थोड़ा ठीक है ये, अभी के लिए मैं इसको क्लोज कर रहा हूँ। को नहीं करते ऐसे, तो बाद में भी बन जाएगा। गाइस बाय बाय, हम बाद में मिलते हैं।